You don't know flag.
Thank you, Sergeant Satchel. Thank you, Sergeant.
You don't know flag.
Welcome to You Don't Know Flag, a podcast full of stories about retro gaming, retro computing, video games, arcade games, and technology from a guy who was there and still is. My name is Rob O'Hara, but for the next 30 minutes, you can call me Flag. When I was a kid, probably 10 years old, my neighbors and I used to jump off of their roof for fun. The neighbor's house had a stockade fence that went right up to the side, and so if you climbed up the 2x4s, the 3-level of 2x4s, and stood on the top, their roof came down at a slant that almost came to the top of that fence. So you could stand on the top of the fence, lean over, and get right up onto the roof of their house. And so we would follow each other. Single file, we would go up all the way up the roof, all the way down the other side towards the backyard, and sit down. You had to sit down on your bottom, scooch up to the very edge, swing your legs a couple of times, and push off, jump off of the roof of the house, land on the grass. Of course, there was a art to landing so that you didn't break your legs. Kind of either crumple into a pile or land and roll, something like that. But either way, once you hit the ground, you would get back up. Everybody would laugh, and you would immediately go back in line and go do it again. So I mentioned that because maybe a couple of years ago, I decided I wanted to start skateboarding. Now, I'd been a skateboarder. If you listen to You Don't Know Flack and old episodes, I did a whole episode about skateboarding, and I was a Tales of a Teenage Skateboarder. I loved skateboarding back in the late 80s, early 90s. I was all into it and got away from it. I got out of shape. I put on too much weight, just lost interest. Skateboarding wasn't cool anymore, and so I quit skateboarding. So I got I don't like the new style skateboards. I don't like the ones that look like a pill shape. I don't like that. I like the fishtail ones from when I was a kid, 80s and 90s ones. So I found one of those, and I told my wife I was going to start skateboarding again. I got up on the skateboard, and I was holding on to either her, I don't remember, her, maybe a wall or a shelf or something, but I wasn't just standing on a skateboard by itself. I was steadying myself. And I told my wife, I looked down and I said, man, I just don't want to fall from this height. And she started laughing, and she said, you're 2 inches off the ground. And I said, it's true. I was not very high up. And that has become a running joke between the two of us. Many times when we come out of stores and there's a curb, that's one thing about reaching middle age. Something as a kid I never thought twice about was stepping off a curb. But now when I step off a curb, I do it intentionally. And every time I do, my wife says, be careful. You don't want to fall from that height. Welcome to episode 238 of You Don't Know Flack. My name is Rob Flack O'Hara. On this episode, we're doing a little bit different format this time. I've written down almost no notes at all, and really just some keywords to talk about. I've had several conversations with my wife recently, and thoughts that have come up about, I wanted to do a podcast about reaching middle age, and I told my wife that, and she said, oh, you have reached it. It's past tense. You are not at the hill. At 51 years old, you are over the hill. I remember when over the hill parties were held for 40-year-olds. We had a coworker who turned 40. I was probably 10 years younger than him, and we went to a party, and they gave him it was everything there was gag gifts. It was walkers and the whole house was decorated like with tombstones. Doesn't seem as funny now that I'm 51. But now I think over the hill parties would be when you're 50, right? Not when you're 40. Now I think 40 is pretty young. It feels young to me. I don't know. But anyway, so over the past, I know I haven't done a podcast in a month or so. Life gets in the way, and sometimes you just get burned out on stuff. But I've been making these lists, just random thoughts, just random phrases that I've written down that I wanted to talk about. So sometimes, I guess on one end of the spectrum, I would say these episodes of You Don't Know Flack are completely written out, completely scripted. When I used to do the podcast in the early days, I wrote them out word for word. I would read them. I would literally write down every single word and read them. And then I got to the point where I was comfortable enough where I would just write down phrases or bullet points or things. Well, this is probably the most minimalistic notes I've ever had for You Don't Know Flack. I really just have some keywords written down. Things to spark ideas and remind me of what I was talking about. Because by the way, when you're 50, you often need reminded of what you were just talking about. That's one thing that I did not know would happen, would be that I would lose track of where I was, not just randomly, but multiple times in the same conversation. That happens to me a lot. So before we get started, I want to let everybody know a couple of things. Number one, I have started putting the old episodes of You Don't Know Flack on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/Rob O'Hara, there is a playlist there for You Don't Know Flack. I think episodes 1, 2, and 3 are there. Then there are a couple of episodes that I tried doing in video format, and spoiler, this episode I am recording live, both video and audio. So I don't know if I will keep doing that. I don't really have a lot of visuals, but some people like watching them on YouTube. And of course, my bread and butter has always been the audio format. I have a face for radio, as they say. So it will always be available in podcast. Always, always, always. If nothing else, if it's never anywhere else, it will always be on the audio feed, which will always be on Apple Podcasts, and you will always be able to get on my website, which is podcast.robohara.com. Also, I want to give some thanks and quick shout outs, because like I said, I haven't done this in a while. First of all, You Don't Know Flack and all my podcasts are possible because of Patreon. I have patron supporters who have been supporting me. Some of my supporters have been supporting me for a decade or longer, and some of them are just brand new on the bus, relatively new. But sometimes people think, oh, well, when I sign up for Patreon, like it's only a couple of bucks a month. That doesn't make a difference. Well, it adds up. And so people think, well, podcasting is free. Well, parts of podcasting are free. Parts of podcasting are not free. I have to pay for domains every year. I have to pay for hosting. I have to pay for equipment. I have to pay for a lot of things. And if I never made a penny off of Patreon or anything else, I would still do this. I would just eat the cost. So, it's never a threat of if nobody supports me, that the show will end. It's never that way. The only thing it would ever be is if people don't listen. The show could end, because then I could save a lot of money. I wouldn't need a domain or anything. I could just set up a pretend microphone here in my room and just talk into that. Yeah. So that would be much cheaper. But I have a lot of patrons and some, all of my patrons who have been very understanding and supportive over the past month or so, where I haven't been very productive. So I always like to give thanks to my Patreons, people like Nathan Dagenhart, Damian Frank, Steve Sharippa, and David Cavallari. Those are just some of my patrons who have stuck with me and continue to support this show. So if you would like to do that, go over to patreon.com/Rob O'Hara. You can sign up. The other thing I want to tell you about Patreon is I have double checked and made sure that the checkbox to allow for free followers is there. I've been contacted by a couple of people, some who supported me in the past, some who have never supported me, but people who have just said, like I get apologies, people that say, I would love to support you, but for whatever reason, I can't right now. I get that. Nobody gets that more than me. There are things that happen in life, and I get it. And the people that support me on Patreon and stuff, like, I super appreciate it. Talking about money is awkward for me. I don't like to talk about it, but that money does help, like I said, but I would never want to cut off someone from seeing that content just because they can't afford it. So there are always going to be other rewards for the people that do support me financially on Patreon. But if you just want to see what's happening on Patreon and you aren't in a place to financially support the podcast, go to patreon.com/Rob O'Hare. There should be an option for you to follow the podcast for free. And I completely support that. So I don't want to exclude anybody from that stuff. So we talked about Patreon. If you have feedback about this or any episode of the show, you can always email me directly at robohara@robohara.com. You can join the conversation on Facebook at facebook.com/Robcast. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Commodore. I'm also now on Blue Sky as Commodore. So if that's your bag, and I feel like that may be my bag going forward, I'm on Threads too. I'm on all of them. I just don't use them. I've been a Twitter guy for a long time, but I'd like to become more of a Blue Sky guy in the future. But anyway, anywhere you can find me on there, I would love for you to follow me, interact with me, ask me about the show, ask me about anything. I try to post stuff at least once a day and sometimes more than that. You can always, if you want to get more personal and chat with me, if you are a Patreon supporter, then you get access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server. And so you can come over there and chat on I have specific areas set up for people to chat. And finally, you can always call and leave a message on the podcast hotline, which is area code 405-486 YDKF. So, back to falling off skateboards and this fear of falling from the height of a curb. When I think about growing up as a kid and all the stuff we used to do, I mean, the skateboarding is just, just a drop in the bucket of all the things that we used to do. I used to go run around in the creek. I've talked about, I did a whole episode about the creek where we would go down there, we would run up and down, we would jump off. There was a bridge. I guess my childhood involved a lot of jumping off of things. I didn't think of it being as that way. But we built a lot of skateboard ramps, and these ramps were not quality. They were, one of our specialties was finding abandoned things like abandoned forts or abandoned structures and taking the wood off of those and being very careful not to bend the nails so we could reuse those old rusty nails. We would pull all the nails out and then we would go. I remember when I was a little kid, I mean, probably like 7 years old, 8 years old, we built a ramp out of a piece of wood, like one long piece of wood and a couple of pieces of wood stacked up. I mean, the simplest of ramps. And we used some rusty nails we found to nail it together. And we put it at the end of my driveway. And my driveway comes straight and then has this drop off. And it's really, really aggressive drop off. And so my dad had a load of gravel brought in to kind of make it a little less aggressive, to make it more sloped. And we put the ramp there. And I remember I went on my bicycle and I jumped the ramp, and the ramp just blew up into pieces and the bike fell, and I fell down and landed like on my not my shins, my forearms, and slid, and it not only tore open my arms, but gravel like went into my skin. Like I had gravel embedded in my arm, and then I didn't go home. We just reset it back up and did it again. If I did that now, 100% that's a hospital trip. I'm not going to walk around with rocks embedded in me at 51 years old. That's not happening. So yeah, I it seems like in general, I was less afraid of getting hurt. And that getting hurt, the consequences of getting hurt were less dire. Like, if I jumped off a roof, like I did, first of all, when I jumped off a roof, I didn't think about the consequences, right? I certainly didn't think about the consequences of all the stuff I did on skateboards, like trying to go, jumping off of ramps or going up and down half pipes or all these different crazy things. I thought, first of all, you never think when you're that age, you never think you're going to get hurt. But if you do get hurt, you're going to be over it tomorrow or maybe the next day or maybe a couple of days. But that's it. I don't seem to remember, and I'm not talking about a broken bone or something, but just like a bruise or something. Like I don't remember things hurting for more than a couple of days. And of course, now things hurt all the time. My body just hurts all the time. I have some notes to talk about later about pain and your body giving out and stuff. But yeah, now I think as I'm older, I think about the consequences of getting hurt more than I used to. I think of long-term hurt, long-term pain, long-term damage. I rode a motorcycle lots. I was actually pretty good about wearing a helmet. I was usually a helmet kind of guy, but I can tell you that for the first 30 years that I drove a car, I did not wear a seatbelt. I was not a seatbelt wearing guy, and I've tried to. I would say now I'm a 80% of the time seatbelt wearing guy. I try to always do it. I don't always do it. But what I remember, and the kids, when your kids are younger, they learn stuff at school, and then they're like, oh, you went in a car without a seatbelt? You're like, yeah, I did it for 30 years. And I rode a skateboard. I never owned a helmet for a skateboard or any pads, or a bike helmet. We had words for kids that wore helmets who rode their bikes and they weren't nice. But boy, that's one of the things you'll find out when I do podcasts off the cuff and I don't plan things out. I make myself laugh when I think about things like that. So that may be one of the things you hear a little bit differently about this episode of You Don't Know Flack. But yeah, so when I rode a motorcycle, if I didn't wear a helmet, I didn't think what could happen. Now, I sold my motorcycle a couple of years ago to buy the van for Big Rob's Van. Shout out Big Rob's Van. You go to bigrobsvan.com/links. But but I had a motorcycle. I sold it to buy the van. But before that, when I had the motorcycle, I would go up to 7-Eleven, which is like 2 miles from my house, and I would wear a helmet. And I would think, boy, what happens if I fall and crack my head open? And what happens if some car comes out and hits me? Like I think of the repercussions. Like I don't want to, have my head smashed and be, laying on the side of the road somewhere. But when I was younger, I just never thought about the consequences, I guess, of those things. I wrote down the word music. Boy, music is a tough one, man. When I was younger, I remember one time talking to this girl. It was one of those situations. It was like we're feeling each other out. Maybe we were going to date. Maybe we weren't going to date, sort of the thing. Just kind of getting to know each other. And I remember asking her what was her favorite music. And I had all these questions. And I was this is early college days. This is 19, 20, 21 years old, somewhere in there, well, not 21 because I got married to Susan when I was 21, but let's say 18, 19, somewhere in there. And I remember talking to this girl and I was like, well, who are your favorite bands? What's your favorite kind of music? And she said, no, I just don't listen to music. And I went, what? And she said, no. And I was like, well, who's your favorite band? She said, I don't have a favorite band, just whoever's on the radio. And I remember thinking, I would never date somebody, much less get married to someone who couldn't name their top 10 bands. Somebody who couldn't say, what their favorite music was. They didn't even have a favorite, genre, anything like that. And it was so foreign to me because at that age, I could have told you my 10 favorite heavy metal bands, my 10 favorite hard rock bands, who I completely separated from heavy metal bands. and then rock bands and pop bands. I could have told you my 10 favorite rappers. I was so into music as a kid. And not only into music, I was into musicians. I remember not just listening to the Beastie Boys, but getting into the Beastie Boys. And by that, I don't just mean their music. I mean, what are they up to? I wanted to know all about their studio that they had built. I wanted to know, what projects were they working on? Just everything, more than just the music. I really wanted to know, about musicians. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. And so I don't know when that stopped. And people told me like there's an age, where people start to lose their interest in modern music. And I remember just thinking that will never happen to me. It just won't happen. And it happened. I would say definitely by Y2K, I just could not. And so put this in perspective. I was born in 1973. So I wouldn't say it happened by the time I was 20, but I would say it was definitely over by the time I was 30. So somewhere in the middle, let's say by the age of 25, I just started. So when I was 25, it would have been 98. So no, because I'm thinking like 98, like Limp Bizkit. I know when that came out. I mean, I was super. There was bands. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like 94, 95, 96. That was like when new metal came out. Korn and Fear Factor, and Fear Factory, and Deftones, and anyway, so there were definitely bands that I got into in the late 90s. But probably, let's say, by the time I was 30, I just kind of lost interest in new music. I definitely lost interest in listening to the radio. Now, here's a funny thing. When I was a kid, we had a radio station here in Oklahoma City called KRXO, and it was the classic rock. And KRXO, when I was a kid, played Led Zeppelin. Like, at any given time, if you turn the radio station on, you were going to hear Led Zeppelin, you were going to hear Bob Seger, or you were going to hear Creedence Clearwater Revival. One of those three bands would definitely be playing when you turn on KRXO. And when you turn on KRXO today, almost guaranteed you're going to hear Nirvana. You may hear Pearl Jam. You're going to hear all those. I had a friend a long time ago who coined this term of a whole genre of bands, and she called them Puddle of Nickel Creed. And so, it's like all those bands that just kind of sound the same from that era. You're going to hear some Puddle of Nickel Creed when you turn on KRXO today. That's oldies. That is oldies. Grunge is oldies. If you're lucky, you might hear some Kiss on KRXO, but it's probably going to be new Kiss. It's probably going to be, you might hear Rock and Roll All Night, actually. But anyway, yeah, I just kind of lost. And then it happened. The whole thing happened. The thing that my dad used to always say, he used to have this thing he would always say to me. He didn't know most of the bands I listened to. But the one name that he knew was Metallica. Like even adults that didn't listen to Metallica knew the name Metallica. So Metallica to him stood for all heavy metal bands. And he would always say, that the music he grew up with had a melody, had a tone, was musical. And he would say, you cannot whistle a Metallica song. You can't hum. Or he would say, oh, you like Metallica? Hum me a tune. And then he would laugh. And he would basically, he would say that you can't hum a Metallica song, right? And my wife and I would joke, and on the way home, we would go through Metallica albums and sit there and whistle the main riff, and the other one would always get it, right? So we definitely could. There was something about that music that we could hear that he couldn't hear. I don't think my dad listened to a lot of Metallica, but it was just, to him, it was just noise. He could not, it was not music to him. It was just noise. And I would say, I don't know when this happened to me, but there is a certain point where that same thing happened to me. And when, I wouldn't say it's noise as much as it's just all the same, So when I turn on pop music, and by the way, I don't listen to the radio anymore, but my wife likes to listen to pop music because that's what the kids like to listen to when they were younger in the car. And so she still listens to the radio, and she will turn the radio on, and I will say, "Is that Billie Eilish?" And she goes, "Nope." And I'll say, "Is that Taylor Swift?" And she goes, "Nope." And I go, "Well, I'm out. That's the only two people I know." And the thing is, everything that's on the radio to me sounds like Billie Eilish or Taylor Swift. Like, they all sound like that to me. And it's not like a mean thing where I'm like, oh, they just all sound the same. I mean, literally to my ear holes, they all sound the same. Like, there's no, and then I'll hear one, and then Susan will go, she'll go, "Hey, that's Billie Eilish." And I go, "Oh yeah." I go, "It sounds like Billie Eilish." But the thing is, half of them sound like Billie Eilish to me. So, yeah, I just don't listen to the radio anymore. When I am in the car, I listen to my music, and I listen to podcasts. So I subscribe to way more podcasts than I could listen to in a week. I probably only listen to a tenth of the podcasts that I subscribe to. Not to get off on a tangent, but podcasts during COVID and the pandemic got taken over by professional people, people that like professional actors and musicians and people that weren't doing television shows and weren't making movies, all of a sudden decided to go start making podcasts. And that's great. And there's a lot of great podcasts out there, but it kind of really put the pinch on the amateurs, people like me, where I wasn't doing anything differently, and I saw my numbers drop because why would you listen to me talk about Metallica when there's a Metallica podcast? You know what I mean? So there was a lot more competition happen over the past 2 or 3 years. So I subscribe to a lot of podcasts, but I just don't have enough time to listen to them all, mostly because I don't commute. I work from home now. So anyway, getting off track. My music, the stuff that I like to listen to, I ripped all my MP3 or all my CDs to MP3s many, many, many years ago. I may do it one more time. I've already done it twice. I did it when CDs, like when you could first rip MP3s, like when I first went through my entire collection, I had about 1,400 CDs. I was a huge music fan, I'm telling you. And I think I ripped them all at either 128. Yeah, I think it was 128 because drive space was a premium back then. And then I went back and I think I have gone through and verified that all of my stuff is at 320, which is far better than my ears can hear. I have done blind audio tests between like 192K MP3s and 320K kilobits per second MP3s, and I can't tell the difference. I can't tell the difference between 128 and 320, which kills me. It kills my heart to say that because I was an audiophile and I was a music file. I loved music, and I just can't hear the difference anymore. Even good. I mean, if I had really, really, really good headphones and I was listening for something specific, like a cymbal or something that might be distorted in a lower bit rate, I might be able to pick it out, but probably not. It's unfortunate that the ears go along with everything else. But anyway, so I've thought about going back through one more time before I get rid of I still have all my CDs. They're in storage. And I think about pulling them out and ripping them all in FLAC, F-L-A-C, not F-L-A-C-K, FLAC format or something. But I always know there's going to be something better some other day, like maybe I should do them as WAV, maybe who knows, right? But honestly, for listening to 320 is good enough for me. But it's way, way better than what I can hear. But anyway, yeah, so I have a Plex server here at my house, and there's a a audio version. I think it's called Plex Amp, and it is just for streaming music. So I have Plex Amp on my phone, and so when we go on in the car or on road trips, I don't listen to Spotify. I mean, I do. I have Spotify, but my go-to is Plex Amp, and I listen to my old CDs. And I'm literally listening to music that I grew up listening to. Like, I listen to old Metallica or Iron Maiden, and not just hard rock kind of stuff like that. You know, I mean, in the car, we'll listen to Billy Joel or we'll listen to whatever. But it's all stuff I'm familiar with, and it's all stuff from before I was 30 years old. That's just... kind of where I am on a music thing. Like I said, I remember multiple things I want to say. I remember being upset at old people who would not listen to my music, you know? And I remember thinking like that will never happen to me. And then it happened to me. So it makes me mad at me. It makes me mad at me. Marilyn Manson, I'm paraphrasing here, said something that I hate what I've become to escape what I hated being, and it's that thought of like I never wanted to do it, and then I did it, and now I hate me. I don't hate me. Young me hates old me. Anyway, let's move on to the next note I have here. This is a literally a one word that I wrote down here, and it says naps. Boy, do I love taking naps. That's something that I remember when I was a kid, like during the summer, my mom babysat other kids. I say that today we would call it like a home daycare, but back then we just said that she babysat kids. And they would come over, we would go out and play, we would, do all this stuff, we would have lunch. And then there was this time where it was like, hey, it's time to take a nap. And I mean, I wasn't like 3, I was like 7 or 8, like time to take a nap. Everybody, we'd all go, and I hated it. I would fight it. I would hide a book. I would go in my bed and I would sneak and take a book in there. And then when I was supposed to be taking a nap, I would go read Hardy Boys. I had all these Hardy Boys books or a Electric Company or 321 Contact Magazine or something. I just loved reading as a kid. So I would, I would sneak stuff in there to read instead of taking a nap. And now it's the opposite. When I try to read something, I immediately fall asleep. I don't know when that started happening, but it did. But now I love a good nap, and I plan my day around a nap. I mean, I start work at 7 in the morning and get off at 3:30, between 3:30 and 4:30. And I mean, I can't wait to go take a half-hour nap. I mean, I will just go right into the other room when I'm done working and go close my eyes for 15, 20 minutes and take a nap. I remember when I was younger, I went to visit a Microsoft campus. And I had these, it was for a training thing, but we spent a week there. And so we got to know the people and we got to go all around the campus. And I remember they had free soft drinks, which I thought was really cool. And they had what would you call it? Outside the cafeteria, like just kind of an area, like there's a foosball table and TVs, just this general area. People hung out, and I thought that was cool. And then they had these little rooms for power naps. And they said, yeah, people spend so much time working at Microsoft. We don't want them to go home. They just go in there and close the door, and they take a nap, and then they go back to work. And I was like, oh, I can't believe that. Who would want to do that? And now a dedicated nap room at work, that's the greatest idea I've ever heard of. That's the best idea Microsoft ever had. It's way better than Windows or anything like that. It's just dedicated nap rooms located around a campus. I am in. Now I really want to work there because I'm going to take like a 4-hour nap every day in that room. I never thought I would plan my day around naps or falling asleep in the car. I loved, for road trips, I love listening to music. I love doing all that. Now I get in there and just that motion of the car, I'll fall asleep, and it's worse when I'm a passenger. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I definitely, I enjoy a good nap. That is definitely for sure. And you know, the thing is, I guess I could say even more about naps is more than naps, I would say sleep in general, right? Like my sleep patterns changed as I started getting older. I was never one to sleep in. I never understood people who would sleep, you know, past, like even as a kid, even when I worked like late nights and stuff, I never slept past 9 in the morning, and rarely did I sleep past 8, you know? So I was always like 8:30, even when I went to bed at midnight or 1 or something like that. I didn't like sleeping in. But I definitely always got 8 hours of sleep, and boy, that just dialed back over time. Like 8 hours, I would kill to get 8 hours of sleep today. I never sleep 8 hours. I mean, at most I sleep 6 hours. Sometimes I sleep 5 hours, which then leads to the nap, right? Because you don't get enough sleep. And it's not that I don't want to. You know, sometimes my wife says, like, well, why do you get up so early? I go, what am I going to do? Lay here in bed and stare at the ceiling for an hour? Like, I might as well just get up and get on my phone or get on the computer or turn on the news or something, you know? So I thought that old people, like when I we would go visit my grandpa, not too often, but the few times that he did. And I remember hearing him like at 5 in the morning making coffee. He didn't have to go to work that early, but he would get up, make coffee, and read the newspaper. And I was like, why does he get up so early? It's because he was old. That's why. It's because when you get old, you just get up early, you know? So yeah, I didn't know that, I mean, of all the things to lose when you get older, like the ability to sleep for 8 hours or like I cannot imagine in what world, like what scenario would I sleep for 10 hours? Like I literally, like maybe if somehow I magically ran a marathon and then took a bottle of, like, well, I don't want to say a bottle, but I took like sleeping pills or something, you know what I mean? Like maybe that would do it, but I don't even think that would. I might get 8 hours of sleep if I did that. So, yeah, sleep, something that went by the wayside over the years. Here's something I wrote down. Around the time I turned 40, I started enjoying saving screws and pieces of wood and plastic containers. Like I remember my great grandpa Brown, who I didn't know. Like we went to their house a few times. I mean, we went to their house a lot, probably. I mean, I remember going there at least a dozen times as a kid. And by the way, his name, my grandpa Brown's first name was Ollie. What a cool name. I don't know anybody named Ollie. That's a cool name. Well, I guess it would be Oliver, right? But I only know one Oliver. Anyway, he like that was a time, like they were of the generation where when you went, like the mom, like my grandma Brown, like that's where the kids went. My mom went to go talk to my grandma Brown. That was her grandma. My great grandma Brown, and we would go in there, and she had comic books and coloring books, and we would do that. And my great grandpa, would go out to his workshop, and we didn't go there. Like he was like, bye. He had on his coveralls or whatever, and he went out there and he tinkered on stuff, whatever he did, you know. I don't know what he did. But I never went out there. But I do remember, like as a kid, like going out there once or twice and just seeing these rows of plastic. Like old coffee containers, like Folgers cups, you know, like Folgers containers and glass jars just full of bolts and nuts and screws and stuff. And I don't have too many of those now, but I have some. Actually, what I've started buying, I've bought a couple of them from garage sales, are like those little tool, like a tool organizer, you know, like the little metal box that has all the little plastic shelves that you pull out and you put all, you know, all your little screws and stuff in. And I had one, and I had all the screws and everything sorted. And then I took a piece of paper and like I drew the graph of what it looked like. And I wrote down all, like I was like, wall screws with drywall mounts, you know, and tiny screws, like 1/4-inch screws for this or whatever. Computer screws and computer jumpers. I saved computer jumpers for motherboards for so long. I have hundreds of them, and I have not needed one in a decade. But anyway, so now, like I don't have them in jars. I do have a couple of plastic jars, but I've said that to my wife. Like I'll buy a jar of pickles. You know, I love pickles, man. Pickles, and when after I eat all the pickles, Susan will say, let's she'll throw that, and I go, ooh, that's a good container. I could use that. I could put something in that, and then I got to go find something to put in the pickle jar. Like, look at all these Sharpie markers I've collected. I'm going to put them in this jar. That's a very old man thing to do, I think. So, yeah, I think that's something that I started doing, I don't know, like when I was 45. Same thing with scrap pieces of wood. I do all these wood projects, and I have 2x4s, and you cut, and you end up with a piece that's 2 foot long or 1 foot long, and then I go, oh, I could do something with that. And I had these pieces of 2x4s that were like 6 inches long, and I was going to throw them away, and I cut them diagonally, and I made doorstops out of them. I put them out in the workshop. I was like, see, that's why you don't throw that away. That's a good piece of wood right there. So I have a 30-gallon plastic tub full of wood scraps that I might use one of them in the next decade, but it's there that way, because this is the thing. It's just like getting rid of stuff as you get older. No matter what I get rid of, that's the one thing that I need. Like, I got rid of a computer fan, and then like 2 weeks later, the computer fan in my server went out, and I had to order one. I was like, the one thing I threw away, so I don't want to go buy an 8-foot 2x4 because I need a 6-inch block for something, and so that's why I have 50 of them in a tub, because you never know when you're going to need that kind of stuff. I don't know when this was, maybe in my 40s or mid 40s, but I started having regular doctor's appointments. Like, I started having checkups. I never did that. There was, I don't want to say decades, but definitely years where I did not go see a doctor. Like, I didn't just go in just for like a, hey, how are you? How you feeling type thing. And now I got to do that. Like, I don't know, twice a year where I go in and, like, I'm all for going to the doctor if something's hurting or something ain't working right or whatever, but going just when everything's great, and then just going in and being like, yeah, everything's good, and then they check you out and they go, all right, because of course the doctor's going to know if something's not going good. They're going to look at your blood work or you come in with a big goiter on your neck and you're like, it's just a thing, and they go, we should probably look at that. So that's never happened to me, but let's not rule it out the way things are going, yeah, it just becomes like that, like the whole medical thing becomes part of your life. I don't know what time, like what, maybe, like I say, I always think like mid 40s, that was a thing. Like I started, I got blood pressure medicine, and the doctor was like, all right, here's this blood pressure medicine. You need to take it every day. I was like, no, I don't take pills every day. He's like, well, you do now? Now that's who you are. You take a pill every day, And now, I've talked about this a little bit, like things that are failing me. Like my vision is failing me. My eyes are failing me. My back is failing me, And so now I have like back pills that I take 3 times a day. You know what a pain that is? Like I have an app on my phone that sounds like a pill box shaking. It goes, and then it says, hey, did you take your pills? And then I always go, nope, because I'm old and I forget. So then I got to go in there. But yeah, I got pills that I take morning, noon, and night now. Like that. I didn't. That was a thing that my grandma did, and all of a sudden it's a thing that I do. Like, it's just something that like a lot of things, these things sneak up on you. They're things that I thought would never be important to me. It was something I did not know until I was 40 was what my copay was going to be or how much an insurance thing was going to cost me. Like, I did not care what insurance premiums were until I was like, oh, well, I might have to go a few times next year. I better shop around and see, what the old Blue Cross Blue Shield premium is going to be this year. It's just, I became, I guess, like cognizant of medical stuff. Like that became part of my life. That it was just like, I went to the doctor when I had to have my tonsils removed in 3rd grade. I went to my doctor, when I burned my hand as a kid really bad. But to go, like, just to say, hey, for them to give me the up and down, and the ones over and say, well, Yeah. And you know what's really bad is like probably when I was 40, you go to the doctor and they go, all right, well, everything's good. We'll see you in a year. And I go, okay. And then you get to a certain age and they go, well, probably 6 months. Like, what happened to once a year? Wasn't that enough? I go, we gotta start keeping a closer eye on you. So that's that's a rough one. Speaking of body stuff, this is funny. I just jotted this down. I remember the first time, and this was a long time ago. I mean, I was probably in my 30s, late 30s, maybe 40. Let's say 40. The first time I went to go get a haircut, and the hairdresser cut my hair, and then at the end she said, "You want me to go ahead and get rid of that, shave that ear hair for you?" And I went, "What? I don't have ear hair." And she's like, "Oh yeah, you do." And she goes, "Well, let me just, And I remember like asking my wife, I was like, "Do I have hairy ears?" And she's like, "Yeah, kind of." Like, and I go, "I've never in my life." But man, once you get the age, like there's 2 age. Like I remember in 6th grade, I was really curious about when was I going to start getting hair in my armpits. That's all I cared about. I was like, these other guys are getting hairy armpits. I better get some hairy armpits soon. And then you fast forward, 30 years. And now I'm like, boy, there's hair growing everywhere. I got a tuft of hair in the middle of my back. Like, when did that happen? I got hair on my ears now. And now I got these weird eyebrows, I get these little eyebrow things that grow that feel like a wire or something. And I'll sit there and I try to pick them out, but then I end up picking out more. One time we were on a road trip and I turned and looked at my wife and she goes, "Where half your eyebrows missing?" And I was like, "What?" I was like, "I'm trying to get this." And she goes, "You pulled out like half your eyebrow, And it's not like a nervous tick like people. I know there are people that for out of nerves or whatever, like a habit, they pick at their eyebrows. It's not that. It's that I get these ones that feel like a wire brush, and I sit there to try to get it, and you end up getting all the good ones around it, So, yeah, that's something I didn't know was going to start happening. But yeah, the whole body experience, I a few years ago, 3 years ago, I woke up and I had hurt my shoulder by how I slept on it, and my shoulder hurt for 9 months. I'm not even kidding. Like, I went to the doctor and I was like, I think I tore my rotator cuff. And the doctor says, "Why do you think that?" And I was like, "Well, I Googled it. And when your arm hurts this bad for this long, that's what they say it is." And she said, "Well, were you, playing tennis?" And I was like, "No, I was sleeping. I literally hurt myself sleeping." That's a new low. When that happens, I've hurt myself many times over the years doing dumb stuff, but never sleeping. That was a new one on me. So that was good. And it hurt forever. I did the same thing with my knee one time. I told my doctor. So I was sitting I was sitting on the edge of my van with my foot tucked underneath me, like my left leg. My left foot was underneath me, and my right foot was out of the van, and I was going to just step forward and then pull my other leg out. But my other leg kind of got trapped underneath it, so my knee bent like 180 degrees, like the way it's supposed to bend, not the wrong way. The knee did what it was supposed to do, but it pulled something so hard in my knee, and my knee hurt so bad that I was like, "This is it. Like, my knee is going to fall off." I don't know if a knee can actually fall off, but it hurt so bad. I went to the doctor and she looked at it and they did like a scan, and she goes, "Nah, there's nothing torn or whatever." I go, "Well, it just hurts." And she goes, "Well, it's going to hurt, and I was like, "When's it going to stop hurting?" She goes, "You tell me. Like, just exercise it and stretch it." I was like, I can't walk, and my knee hurts so bad. And I would say my knee doesn't hurt. I mean, that was like 3 years ago. And when I'm watching TV, I have a little footstool. And if I turn my knee, sometimes it'll pop. It's that knee. So I'm like, well, that was it. I like that's that. Going back to what I was saying about jumping off the roof, like that's, I was a guy who jumped off roofs, and now I'm a guy who hurt myself stepping out of a van. I bought running boards for my van, and my buddy Andy came and installed them because I was like, I can't get up into this vehicle. It's too high. It's not like it's a monster truck. It's a stock vehicle that I can't get into. So that's fun. Now this is just a podcast of me being an old man complaining about stuff all of a sudden. Here's another thing. Airline food. No. This is a fun thing. This one might be a little TMI for you. But there are things now that I do, like if we're going to go out of the house for the day, I will tell you there's two things. Number one, there used to be this thing like, what did they say it? Like the pre-party or whatever, like people that would have a drink before they went to the party, like pre-drinking or whatever. I don't know. I think there's a term for that, but I always tell Susan, like, hey, I need to take some pre-Tylenol. Like I will take Tylenol before things start to hurt because I know they're going to hurt. Like she'll say, hey, we're going to go to the store. We're going to go to the flea market. We're going to go to the thrift store. And I was like, hey, and I'm adding it up. I'm like, that's 2 Tylenol. That's going to be 3. That's 4, whatever. So I'll take the Advil or Tylenol or something like before we leave the house, like before things hurt, because by the time it hurts, it's too late. You know what I mean? So now I've got to like take it before I leave the house. But the other thing is, this was a thing. I thought this was just like a myth or like a joke or something, because I drank coffee for a long time. And it didn't make me have to go to the bathroom, but now it does. And if we're going out for the day, like if we get up in the morning and we have breakfast and coffee or whatever, Susan will say, hey, I'm going out to the car. I'll say, I'll be there in 5 minutes because I'm pretty regular. And we're going to do that before we leave the house. So that and some Tylenol. That's, before getting ready was like picking up my cool pair of shoes. Or whatever it was, getting my music lined up for the day. That was getting ready, and now it's literally taking pain pills and pooping before we leave the house. So, getting old is great. Here's something I wrote down. I didn't know that this was going to happen to me, and obviously this is something that I saw in older people, but I have started. I don't like to admit this, but I have started losing my grip. Not my grip. This is what I wrote. I wrote, I'm losing my grip on technology. I don't think that I'm losing my grip on technology. I think I'm not keeping up with technology. I'm definitely of the generation that I can type. I think there's a line probably where I can type faster than I can text, And I have watched my kids. Not only can my kids text at 1 million words a second, but when we do something on the TV and you have to go to like the search thing and you use the remote. My son the other day was like, oh, let me show you this on YouTube. And he's like, and just going around with the remote. And I was like, I would have like 3 letters, or I use the microphone on the remote. And I'm like, YouTube video Tony Hawk or something like that, right? And then it pulls up and it goes, you said pictures of hawks. And I go, ugh, no. But they're just super fast at doing that. And I feel like I'm definitely a guy, and I believe this in all my heart, that I'm better at computers than I am at phones, and tablets for that matter. Like I could get around. I'm not handicapped when it comes to, like, I could get around in a tablet, you know what I mean? I'm better at iOS than I am at Android. I'm not that good at Android, like I've had to Google, like, get on Google and be like, how do I delete icon or how do I uninstall app? Like, I don't know that much about Android. But here's the thing, and this is the other thing I wrote right below this, is I said, I was the guy who programmed VCRs. Like when I would go to my grandma's house and the clock, there was the old running gag, like the digital display would be flashing 12 because when you plugged in a VCR back then, if it had a timer and a clock, it would just say 12 and it would flash indefinitely until someone set the time. And I would be the guy that would do it. I would go set the time. I was the guy that set up her cordless phone and stuff for my parents, and set up the answering machine and do all that. And like I've watched technology to a certain extent, I mean, they're still sort of in the game, right? But I've seen technology bypass my parents. Like I've watched my dad, who is the guy who got me into computers, who taught me how to program in BASIC, who taught me, got me into computers, taught me how to play games, all that stuff. I have seen him struggle with using a phone, like not being able to do things, or not even understanding that the phone can do certain things, right? And that's not on him. It's just at some point, I think you slow down learning these new technologies, and I thought it would never happen to me, and I feel it slowly happening to me. Susan and I have talked about we started a podcast called Kooky Tales, and we did a few episodes, and it kind of fizzled out. We probably won't be doing any more Kooky Tales, but my immediate thing was, if you're going to do a podcast, the first thing you got to do is go set up a website. And I went and registered Kooky Tales Podcast. And then we went, I call it a land grab, right? Like we went to Instagram, went to Twitter, went to YouTube, all these places, and Gmail, and registered Kooky Tales Podcast, right? And the way that I think of it is, the website is going to be your anchor. The website is where you're like, if you point people to something, you point them to a website, right? And that's not always the case. Like, I think that might be an old way of thinking. Like, I've met people and they go, hey, I sell things online. Here's my Instagram. And I go, well, where's your website? And they go, nope, it's just Instagram. Like, they don't have a website, like things like forums I know are just, byproducts of an old way of thinking. Like I still visit forums and go there, but they're dying, I have a Discord, I'll put a link to the Discord in the show notes. I think if you go to robohara.com/Discord, it will forward you there. And I don't post a lot of stuff there, but I've tried that just because that's the way, like I always felt like there should be a centralized place for people to go. For me, it's robohara.com. There will always be a robohara.com. But when I set up Big Rob's Van, I set up bigrobsvan.com. Nobody goes there. I had someone the other day who has watched every single one of my YouTube videos for Big Rob's Van, told me that they did not know that I had a website for Big Rob's Van, which to me, I thought everybody went to the website and that's where they were seeing the videos, but they don't. They subscribe to the videos on YouTube and that's it, right? I have people that follow Big Rob's Van on Instagram who have no idea that I do YouTube videos or have a website, even though I put that stuff in every post, but it's just a different way of thinking, right? So that's what happens is the technology, like that it's not that the technology bypasses you. Like I know how to press buttons on a phone. I know how to do that, but it's the concepts of the technology that bypass you. I feel like I'm on probably the old cusp of AI. I feel like the AI stuff, we all have our opinions about how much what AI is going to do, if it's going to be the next biggest thing or the next biggest flop, whatever. I'm not debating any of that. But what I'm saying is I feel like I'm on the very edge of the cusp of it. Like people older than me do not use AI and do not care about AI at all. And it's a novelty trick and then that's it, right? And I know people that are 20 years younger than me that use AI every day. They use it in their job. They use it to come up with I talked to a younger guy, and we were talking about podcasts. He was wanting to set up a podcast, and he said he came up with the idea for his podcast and all of his scripts through AI. He just types in ideas, and it generates what he should talk about, and that's what he does. So, I mean, a lot of the younger generation is doing that. And then whatever's next, like it will just keep going. There'll be new stuff that I just won't adopt. I feel like AI is probably the last big push thing that I will do. Who knows? I don't really know. But I feel the technology leaving me behind. The video game stuff left me behind a long time ago. I've said this before, because my vision in my two eyes is different, that I have a hard time with first-person games. They give me a headache. It's not motion sickness. It's because my eyes focus differently. And I used to joke, that I played Doom, and I was like, it's not for me, but Fortunately, hopefully they won't make it Doom 2. Well, then what I didn't realize was that the entire video game industry was going to become first-person shooters. Like every video game. Half of, probably the PS5 library is something in first person. Like that's how games are now. So it's been a long time. I mean, the PS3 was really kind of where I aged out. I liked 2D gaming and I still like 2D gaming, and that's why I do a lot of retro gaming, but it just left me behind, that's what happens, I will say that I'm very lucky to live in a world where I could play all those old games. I will never run out of games to play. I can run emulators. I can play games on any old system. I can play anything I want to play, and I will never run out of stuff. I want to talk about that in just a minute here, but yeah. So the new stuff is just here's what I could tell you on the PS3. I did eventually mod my PS3, and I have I played all these different PS3 games, and I loved it. And then the PS4, I bought a PS4, and I think I own 2 games for it. Like I just lost interest in it, and I have zero. Like I would not. If someone offered to give me a PS5, I would say, you know what, give it to someone else who might use it. Like I don't even want one. Like I just know that I've probably bought my last video game console. Like it's just not, unless it's that new Atari console maybe. But I just know that kind of stuff has just kind of left me behind. So yeah, I do feel like I was definitely groundbreaker, in the day. Like I did stuff on BBSs and stuff like that, and computers and networking and stuff, and just felt like I was on the cutting edge. And now I just don't feel like I'm not only am I not on the cutting edge, but part of me doesn't want to be in the cutting edge. Part of me misses being into the new stuff a little bit, but part of me doesn't. I'll tell you, here's how you know that you've started your downhill slope over the hill, is that you remember you own technology that not only is like not used anymore, but it's so old that it's a joke, or that people don't even know about it. Like if I show my kids a pager, they don't even know what it is. They have no concept of what a pager is. Like, how would you use it? Why would you use it? What did it do? Why would anybody need that function? Why would you need to be able to send somebody a phone number and have them call it? They just don't get it, right? That's not a part of their world. I had a pager for a couple of years. I think I probably talked about it on You Don't Know Flack. I got it at the flea market, and the flea market, the place at the flea market had the service. It was like $6.95 a month, $7. So I would go to the flea market once a month and give this guy $7 cash. That was how I had my service. So I had a pager like that for 2 years. Things like payphones and stuff. Like my kids see payphones, abandoned payphones, but they have no idea what it was like to drive around looking for one. When I was a Pizza Hut delivery driver, we always had quarters with us. So if we went on a delivery and we got lost, we couldn't find their house, we would go back to a convenience store, find the nearest payphone, and call them and get directions, because we didn't have GPS, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have any of that stuff. So now I really do sound like an old man ranting into the wind, but it's just those parts of technology, like I said, like a pager comes to mind, you know what I mean? But things where there's just like no point of reference for people anymore. You know what I mean? Like if you tell somebody that I went to Best Buy one time and I bought a map thing on CD so that I could put it, like a MapQuest or whatever it was, Rand McNally Maps or something, so I could put it in my laptop or, and run it off the CD-ROM drive and look at maps and stuff, like they'd be like, telling people that you paid for encyclopedias or any kind of reference material. That's just a thing that went away. You know what I mean? So here's something I wrote down. I don't really like getting drunk anymore. It's a weird thing to write down. And it's not that I don't drink, and not that I don't drink to excess sometimes, but boy, when I was the guy, man, in my early 20s, like that was the mission, right? Like you would go to a party and you're like, I'm going to get blitzed tonight, bro. I've got 2 bottles of Boone's Farm. I got my 6-pack of Zimas, whatever, And, but that was the plan, right? Like you were like, I'm going to get snookered tonight, baby. And now that is not usually my goal. Like we go out and I have a couple drinks. I go, hey, I think I'm good. You know what I mean? Like you get a little buzz, that's fine. But it's not. It's because I like the drinks and I like hanging out with my friends and getting loose a little bit or whatever. But that's not the goal. The goal is like I don't want to get sick in the morning. I thought that's just what came with partying. But that doesn't appeal to me as much as it used to anymore. What did I wrote down? I wrote down planning, and I don't like it as much. I guess that's really kind of the same sentiment. Is just I don't like that feeling of not being in control. You know what I mean? Like I really don't like cough medicine. I don't like that feeling that cloudy feeling in my head. I don't know. It's just old man cranky stuff. I don't want to end this on a somber note because this one is kind of, so this is going to sound somber, but we'll turn it around here at the end. But I've started like thinking about my own death. I started thinking, not dying. I don't think about dying. Like, I don't think about, what's it going to be like, I don't think about that. But really what I think about is how much time do I have left on the earth? You know what I mean? And in measuring that time. Boy, I'm real bad at measuring stuff, where I would say like, I used to drive a half hour to get to work every day. And then I instantly start thinking, well, I got to drive so that's an hour a day and 5 days a week. That's 5 hours a day. That's 5 hours of my life. And just like doing all this, figuring up, measuring time, measuring and doing that a lot. And so now I start thinking like, I see my parents, they're in their late 70s and I see how they are in their late 70s and I'm in 50 and I go, that's how I'm going to be in 25 years, So, my dad does not want to go on road trips anymore. He doesn't want to get far away from his house anymore. And so I think, there's a limited amount of time. I guess that's a better way to put it. Not that I think about my death, but I just think about we all have a finite amount of time on this planet, Like when you're a kid, like I never thought about like, is there going to be enough time left in my life to watch all the movies I want to watch? A couple of years ago, I got this list. Like I started going through the AFI, the American Film Institute's list of top 100 movies. And I remember I watched Some Like It Hot. I think that's the Marilyn Monroe movie. And I had never seen Casablanca. I'd never seen that. And I watched that. And I had several, classic kind of movies that I had just never seen. Treasure of Sierra Madre. I watched that. And, it hits you when you're like there's not enough time. Like once you realize this, there's not enough time left in my life for me to watch every movie that I want to watch and listen to every album and read every book. Man, there's so many books I haven't read. And I would really like to read them, but it's just, how do you have the time? There's just not enough time. That's what I've just started thinking about is like, there's just X amount of years left. And those years are days and hours, and so you start really thinking about how do you want to spend that time? How, is it important to say that I watched Treasure of Sierra Madre? Is that a good way to spend the 2 hours? Like at the end of your life, you go, I had, 20,000 hours left. I spent 2 of it watching this black and white movie. And it's actually a good movie. I don't have any regrets. I'm not singling out that movie. But I think what I would say is I'm becoming more specific, intentional. That's a better word. I'm more intentional about what do I want to do. But when you're young, man, you just don't think about like Like you never think of like, I'm not going to have enough time to go to Ireland. I'm not going to have enough time to do this. And so now that's what I'm thinking. Like I think like if I go, oh, we go on a vacation every summer, I've got probably 20 vacations left. Like I got to pick places that I want to go, things that I want to see on this planet, you know? So it's not, like I said, I don't think about death when I think about that, I don't think about it in a scared way or a, like being afraid. And because we don't know, none of us know how much time we have left. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. You know, I do a lot of dumb stuff. I sleep in a van sometimes and bad things can happen to me. but, you know, if everything goes according to plan and I've got like 20 vacations left or something like that, like I want to make those count. I want to go do that. And so again, and that's like I said, I'm kind of repeating myself here, but so it's not about like being afraid of what's at the end or whatever. It's like being afraid that I didn't get to do the stuff, that I wanted to do, you know? And so that's what I'm trying to do now. One of the things that I've talked about, I talked about this on the, a little bit on the toy episode where I talked about us having the toy booth and flipping stuff and selling stuff is, you know, I'm surrounded by things. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is an entire room of things, but I have an entire house of things. I have a garage of things and a workshop full of things, and I just have thousands of things around me, you know. And I know that when I think back to my great grandpa, when he passed away, that workshop was full of things, and someone came in and they probably just either gave them away or, you know, had an estate sale and said, here's his stuff. And then out it went, and that was it. And that's what will happen to this stuff. You know, I mean, my kids will take a few things here and there, you know, but do they want this wind-up robot that I have sitting here on my desk? Probably not. Which, I mean, is not worth anything. It's not valuable. It's just this little wind-up robot that I found somewhere. I think paid $1 or $2 for, and he's cute. And I have him sitting here on my desk next to me, and I look at him, and it makes me smile. But someday it will go on a trash can, you know, if I don't get rid of it first. So it's kind of like controlling your own narrative a little bit. So kind of sounds like I'm ending on a down note, but I'm really not. It's not about the end. It's about the journey to the end and taking control of that journey. And so that's what I am doing now. If you have feedback about this or any episode of the show, you can email me directly at robohara@robohara.com. Please do. You can join the conversation on Facebook at facebook.com/Robcast. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram or Blue Sky at Commodore. You can chat with me on the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server or leave a message on my personal podcast hotline at 405-486-YDKF. You Don't Know Flack is made possible by Patreon supporters like Alan Hudgens, Oil of Hope, Brian Barr, and Dave Zilli. If you would like to support my podcast and other creative ventures, visit my, I'm going to itch my nose. I'm trying to do a video here. You can visit my Patreon page at patreon.com/Rob O'Hara. All of my patrons get behind the scenes blog posts. You get random videos, access to the Amigos Retro Gaming Discord server, and other additional perks. To find out more, visit my page. Again, that is patreon.com/Rob O'Hara. For show notes and more information about this and all my other podcasts, go visit podcast.robohara.com. Congratulations. You now made it to the end of the post, the end of the show, and you know a little bit more about Flack. We'll see you here next time. Bye.